Jake Sisko totally flakes on his Dom Jock plans with Nog for Lisa Turtle. Frankenbashir's monster lives and then dies. And Kai Wynn is now a chocolate souffle with halogen tongue sauce. My child. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
All right. Hello.
We have a Nog episode, ladies and gentlemen, so we are joined by very ultimately special guest, Malissa Longo.
Hello.
One of the classic Nog episodes.
I don't know.
Ryan T.
Husk, some say. And that was like my 10th try at saying that first Jake Sisko and Dom Jot line, you guys. That's why we were kind of stumbling through it.
Yeah, Dom Jot is not an easy one to get through there. I'm actually surprised you got the Haligayan tongue sauce.
I mispronounced that one too. It's Haligian. And as soon as I started saying it, I was like, oh, I'm not going to restart. I'm just going to go.
I'm just going to go with it.
So everybody at home, I know I mispronounced it. It's Haligian. I don't know what I called it. I think I said Haligian or
something like that. Yeah.
It's Haligian.
Haligian tongue sauce. Yeah.
My child. Anyway, so, and Lisa Turtle was in this episode, huh?
Yeah.
Lisa Turtle. Who's Lisa Turtle? Somebody.
First, this is our review of season 3 of Deep Space Nine, episode 13, called Life Support, directed by Reza Badi, written by Ronald D. Moore. And before we get into that other stuff, I did want to make a very special note, which is that the first 13 episodes of this season were when Deep Space Nine was on its own, when Next Generation had ended and Voyager had not yet begun. And those first 13 episodes were just Deep Space Nine all by themselves, finally with a few months of breathing room. And today we're reviewing the first episode that happened after the premiere of Voyager. So I don't know if that's got any significance, but it does to me a little bit.
Interesting.
So this is the first of the overlap, the beginning of the overlap.
Right, exactly.
Okay. So when you said Lisa, I imagine that you're talking about our girl from Saved by the Bell.
Yes. And I should have looked up her name. Do you guys remember her name?
Lark
Voorhees.
Lark Voorhees.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's so sweet. She's having like mental disability issues lately. Really hard ones. And not the usual standard or normal things that we're used to seeing, like depression or like bipolar or whatever like that. It's not easily recognizable. It's a different one in which she can't really formulate the words to express her thoughts. All of her thoughts are there, but she's not able to communicate them. It's like she communicates them almost as if she's having a stroke, kind of like, half the time it just doesn't really fully make sense what she's saying, but you can kind of piece together what she's trying to say. And the worst part is that she's fully cognizant of it. So she's almost kind of like in this own, torture chamber of, so it's really sad. It's really tough. So anybody doesn't know anything about that, guys, definitely Google it, look her up and see how you can help her out and support. Her mom has been like a huge support to her throughout all this. And she still looks lovely as ever. She's still super friendly and pleasant and positive, and she's being afflicted by this really difficult, I don't know if it's a communication disease or what it is, but that's what she's dealing with.
Wow. I did not know that. That's sad. I had a huge crush on her when she was on Saved by the Bell. I thought she was like the greatest thing ever.
She kind of was.
She was. Yeah, absolutely. And when she popped up in this episode on this show, it brought back the memories of actually seeing her on the set when, they said, hey, this is going to be your girlfriend. I'm like, the girl from Saved by the Bell?
Yes.
I was like, yes. Thank you, God. One of my prayers has been answered. So it was like a dream come true to work opposite her in this particular. I think you could tell in that opening scene when I'm like, yes, I'll be there. You want to have dinner? Sure, absolutely, I'll be there.
I think I could rearrange my plans.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will diss any friend that I have to be with you. But I thought that was pretty like, I mean, it was just a special thing to be able to get a chance to work with her. And I'm so sad that she told me that she's going through that, because I thought she had moved on and kind of went on to be a mother and just living her life. I didn't realize she was suffering so much. That's terrible.
It really is. It seems like those are really difficult things to live with, because if your mind is still fully intact but your body's not cooperating, it just seems like this almost like a prison, poor thing.
Yeah, that's nothing that I'm sure you would wish on anybody. But she was fantastic in this episode, and
so good seeing her.
Yeah, just radiant and beautiful, and I wish they could have kept her as Jake's girlfriend, but didn't end well. Thanks, Nog.
Okay, can we just address this one? I think Melissa already knows exactly where we're going here, but you got some splaining to do, Melissa. When what was the line?
Which one?
No. The best one was he's like, make yourself useful and cut up some food. And she says, you must be joking. And they all go, ha, 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 ha. And he goes, she's so dumb.
I know.
I was like, oh, I wish I could see Melissa's face right now.
That was one of the best lines in the movie, in this whole thing, actually.
The way he delivered it was so funny. So funny.
Oh, well, yeah.
It was perfect. He just nailed that line, right?
Yeah, he did. He nailed it.
Even though he's such a chauvinistic pig, but I mean, because I thought he was laughing like, yeah, I'm joking.
It was a great laugh that preceded it too. He's like, ha, 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 ha. And then boom.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the only thing that softens it is that I know that's not how Aaron thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Well,
not by a long
he was
shot.
definitely a feminist in his own right, so.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but that was, he nailed it. He nailed that line.
Oh, man. Did he nail that line? She's so dumb. She's perfect. It's so hard watching this, because it's like half your brain wants to say, dude, why are you saying this? But then the other half is like, okay, this is a Ferengi thing. Like, so it's like I have to keep reminding myself, that this is his upbringing, that this is his cultural history, this is his background, this is thousands of years of tradition, for his species. So, and it's hard for me when I'm watching it to like separate the two. That's, I'm constantly reminding myself, okay, no, he's saying it as a Ferengi, he's not saying it as a human, right. Who should know better. He's saying it as a person who doesn't know better, actually, and that's his life, right?
Well, not just that, but he doesn't even think it's better. Even if you told him to know better, he would be like, nah, you're wrong. Sorry, what were you saying, Melissa?
Well, and then the fact that you find out that he even tempered his behavior because he knew that it would make everyone else uncomfortable, which means he could have been a lot worse than he was.
He was being a sweetheart, as far as he knew.
Yeah, I just said cut it up. You can use a fork and knife. You didn't have to chew it for me.
Chew it for me.
Yeah, I loved his performance in this. It's just, it also, that's how much passion he puts into his performance. You can just hear it in his voice, in the way he walks, and the way the friendship is between the two of them is pretty good, because they're both are themselves. They're not really trying to please the other person, or let me, this is who I am, that's who you are, and either we're gonna figure out how to make this work or not, and we've chosen to make it work. So I think that's one of the beauties of this friendship. We also see that Sisko is, not afraid to say that he was wrong.
Right.
which is something that
that's right.
we don't get too much of in the show, which is him admitting. I think I brought up the line. I said you said that humans and Ferengis are too different to be friends, right? I said, Dad, you were right, And he says, yeah, I remember saying that, but I was wrong. And I think that just goes to show you how the relationship between Nog and Jake grew on Sisko, right? Like that grew, like he was like, you know what, that's a good guy. He can hang out with that kid, even though they have differences. And I think that their friendship is a good one, and I will approve it. I think we got the first approval, right?
Right. Well, and you know what? That's what makes it like a different than standard friendship is they'll always have like the odd couple. This is done in so many shows, but there's usually like a commonality between them. Like they both like baseball, or they both like this or that, or they both are engineering students or something like that. Whereas with Star Trek, with Deep Space Nine, with Jake and Nog, they're like, they don't really have to have anything in common to still be friends, to still appreciate what the other person has. The only thing you had in common was that you like each other as friends, And I think it's a brave way to go about it, is to say, look, we don't need a crutch. We could just say these two guys are friends, and maybe we can't explain it, and we don't have to. Kids can be friends with whoever they want, and they don't think about all these other things,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and it's great because you can see both Jake and Nog learning from each other, taking their cultural differences and making a new culture with the differences, and a new friendship is aligned. And I think Sisko admitting that he was wrong is a great example of children teaching their parents.
Mm-hmm.
And Jake and Nog were a great example of teaching their parents how to approach different cultures and relationships and preconceived notions of what a Ferengi is going to be like, or what a human is going to be like. So I think it's a wonderful example, and they do a great job.
That's right. I've said a bunch of times how, like, I think that Rom could have been the best dad in all of Star Trek, because he was the one that let his son change him. All the others had the parents changing the children or teaching the children, but he was the only one that was the most open-minded to allow his son to change him. And this is an episode in the scene where we say, oh, that's right, Sisko does it too. That's really cool.
Yeah, and there was also a moment there too that I felt like Nog defined himself separate from the Ferengi at one point. And the moment was when Jake says to him, yeah, I have a date tonight, right? And Nog says, money is money, but women are better.
Right.
Yes.
He says, is that a rule of acquisition? Nah.
And he's like, no, that's a personal rule. And that's what I mean about the personal. Like, Nog was actually, he had his own ideas, right? So he had he's like, that's my thing. That might not be a Ferengi thing. Ferengi is like, yeah, drop everything for money. But me personally, I'm like, money is money, but girls, that's better.
That's a great point. That was our first hint that Nog was a free thinker and choosing his own path. And he was creating Nog's rules of life.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Great point.
Exactly. And that's how Jake follows up. Is that a rule of acquisition? Like, do I need to know? Do I need to remember that one? He's like, no, that's just my own. That's how I think. Like, I have my own thoughts. I have a personal, that's my personal own opinion. I arrived there on my own. And I like that he asserts that injects that into it so we know that, okay, this guy doesn't just follow the Ferengi code, And even, like you said, Melissa, he softened up some of the other Ferengi things that he could have asked this girl to do, which chew his food. Instead, he was, he put his own little spin on it. Like, all right, let me see if,
Put his own little spit on it. Yeah. That's what I thought you were saying.
No.
Chew the food.
Spin.
I don't know.
So I thought that those were the kinds of signs for me that he was actually separate and starting to have his own, like, identity and be, be himself more. I think we got a little clue into Nog's character kind of forming away from the typical Ferengi, even though the typical Ferengi things were the ones that were highlighted in this episode. It's his break from it that actually, saw a little sunshine for me.
Stand up.
So there were two things that really stood out there with the Jake and Nog thing, and that's definitely one that's really standing out, is that I was surprised at how Sisko addressed it, but not just Sisko. That means how Star Trek addressed this, which was, we thought that it was going to be a very one-dimensional answer, which is Nog's being a dick. Like, this is ridiculous. It's misogynistic. It's closed-minded. It's whatever you want to call it, right? But it was Sisko that not just stops Jake, but stops all of us from thinking that. He says, well, hang on, everybody. Right. This is what's called a cultural difference. In his mind, he's not being a jerk. He's just doing what's within his culture. Will that change someday? Maybe, probably, hopefully. But you can't blame him for what he's been taught growing up his whole life, surrounded by his regular culture. And it's funny because usually we know which direction Star Trek's going to go, but it caught me. I was like, oh yeah, that's a good point. I didn't. Thanks, Sisko.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah.
That was a good teaching moment for all of us. And I was expecting the standard, I was pleasantly surprised as well. And it's kind of like Mary had suggested in one of the panels at Virtual TrekCon where people,
Mary Chifo, right? The great Mary Chifo. Yes.
People try to tend to put human standards on a Klingon when Klingons have a whole different way of living. So the way they look at the universe is going to be totally different from the way a Ferengi is going to look at the universe, or human. So we can't put human values on another species because they didn't grow up with those human values.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I also like the insight into Nog's rational thinking, like his rational brain. So when we were both locked up in that cell together, he started to go through a list of things, right? And it was like Sherlock Holmes. It was like, it's like, why would this happen? If my dad would be here, what's going on? And he was starting to break all of these things down in his head. And I just like that little insight into just how his thought process works, right?
Very clever.
So clever. He's a very smart individual. And you can see it during that process.
Yes.
Yeah.
I also wanted to point out that it does make it's important in an actor, and kudos to Aaron for doing this, when somebody gives you a line like, she's so dumb, and you know that he may have laughed at it. We all may have laughed at it if we read it, but we all probably would have had the same reaction he did, which is like, God, that makes my character seem like a jerk. I don't like you. It probably didn't feel right to say it, and kudos to him for still selling it and committing to it 100% rather than his ego taking over and be like, well, let me try to soften it to make it seem not as bad so that my character's not as bad, or whatever, justification we try to make sometimes. The truth is, sometimes as an actor, you have to just really deliver something 100% as if you believe it, even if you 100% disagree with it.
Right. Yeah, and he sold it. Hook, line, and sinker. Committed.
Well, and that's the thing about it, is knowing Aaron, so just us knowing him. When you watch it, I busted out laughing. I don't know about you guys, but I wasn't.
You rewound it too.
Yeah, I had to see it over and over again because it wasn't like, oh my God, this guy, what an idiot.
Right.
Why did he? I was laughing when I watched it because I can imagine him giving the performance. Like I can imagine him getting ready for that scene and saying, I'm going to do it like this. And, and so when I heard him say that, I just was, I couldn't stop laughing. It didn't have the harsh effect that it did, I'm sure, on her, the girl who was receiving it. But I was just laughing because like, this guy is hilarious. This is comedy right here, because he's playing it seriously. And I think Armin mentioned that about drama and comedy and how he played Quark, right?
Yeah.
He's like, they wanted me to play for comedy, but I played for drama.
Right. Really interesting.
This particular thing, I felt like he was playing for the drama, which made it comedy, right? He wasn't trying to be funny. I just really enjoyed that. I just thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, very good moment.
So, and then of course, there was an A plot in this episode. But before we get to that, let me just finish another thing about this, Jake and Nog subplot. I wonder if this episode, and without giving away any spoilers to anybody that hasn't seen the next episode, probably Cirroc, is that I wonder if they specifically decided, and this would be a great question to ask Ira and Mr. Wolf, if maybe they really wanted to highlight the differences in Ferengi culture within Nog, as well as showing, just how far Nog is from Starfleet. Because as we know, very, very soon, there's going to be a dramatic change in him, or at least the first nugget of change where we go, oh, really? So I wonder if it was deliberate that they really wanted to kind of plant the seed of, look at how far he's come starting here.
I don't know that that's the case. They definitely reveal him to be this guy that's like completely out of touch and, not able to function in the new Federation world where everybody gets along and everything happens, right? He looks like he's a little out of touch with that. But then as we'll see, he begins the journey of being like, he turns into the hero. And I think that this may be a starting point to show, okay, let's start him from this place so we can take him up here. But we're going to bring him way down here and start him here at the bottom. Or, where he emulates these kind of chauvinistic things and he seems like he's out of touch. But I do think that they also revealed his intelligence when they showed his rational thinking in that cell and showed how he was able to deduce what's really happening. And I also like the way he manipulates Jake in the beginning when he first says, oh, you have a date. Oh, okay, yeah, that's great. Yeah. Girls are important. Yes, money is money, but girls, women are better. And then he says, so what's the name of my date?
Right.
Right? And Jake's like, what? She's like, she has a friend, right? And then he says, unless you just rather it be the three of us. It's like I'm going on the date with you whether there's a date for me or not. So he completely bullies Jake into the getting a double date, right?
Just the three of us.
Just the three of us. And then he obviously sets it up, when this is when you knew it was gonna go bad. When he says, don't do anything to embarrass me.
Right. There's a little foreshadowing there.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, God, it's about to happen.
Do you watch Saved by the Bell? Don't screw this up for me.
Exactly.
Malissa, you looked like you were about to say something, but we're going to go to our break in just a few seconds here. So let's take that on the other side. I think that's it. We'll do the trivioids on the other side, which we skipped the last couple weeks because we had better things to do. And then we'll jump back into this review of life support. We'll be right back on the Seventh Rule. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc, Lofton, and Melissa Longo. My name is Ryan T. Husk, and I say things weird. I just realized I was like, why am I like Cirroc, Lofton, and Melissa?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, next on the stage, ISIS.
Stay tuned.
ISIS. So real quick, the trivioids were Jake Sisko flakes on his dom job plans with Nog for Lisa Turtle. Easy for me to say. Are the Cardassians going to issue a formal apology to Bajor? Vedic Bareil, Vedic Bediles. Okay, that wasn't funny.
Bediles.
That's why that one didn't make the cut. You know, like,
Yeah.
and I was like, well, should I deliver it a different? I was like, Vedic Bareil, more like Vedic Bedile. See, that also, Malissa doesn't get either one of them.
No, she gets it. She gets it, trust me.
And Franken Bashir's monster lives. Bareil begs Bashir for drugs. Jake gets Nog thrown in the brig for once. Nog is nice enough to not ask his date to chew his food. And the Kai Wynn chocolate souffle thing. Cool.
Yeah, I think he had a series of lines in there that was just like one after another. We're like, oh, this can't get any worse. And yes, it does get worse. At first he says, boy, Jake, she sure talks a lot more female.
Yeah, I was like, wow.
And I was like, no, don't start there. You're going to ruin it.
Especially the way he was delivering. She sure talks like loud enough for her to hear.
Yeah.
Not even like whispering it.
Not even whispering it. Yeah.
He's like, hint, hint, lady. Jeez.
Just sit there and look beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, no one's asking you to think, my dear. That was another one. And then he gets mad at me after they leave, and he says, "You were treating my female as if she was an equal." And I'm just like, wow, this is as bad as it gets for you, buddy. And I just feel like he, you know, this really showed. I think this made our friendship stronger.
Totally.
than it made it weaker. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I feel like at this point, it's like when you're in a relationship with somebody and you have a big fight, and if you can survive the big fights, you know, or the big fight, then you know that you can survive because, you know, you've laid it all out on the line, and this is what you think. And if you guys feel that way, and we all just lay it out on the line, then we can move forward after we agree to disagree. And I thought that was another thing that was important. It was like, all right, no more double dates, right?
Right. You guys figured it out.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, if it could be that simple with all of us in how we communicate, it's like, okay, if this is the thing that sets us off, then we can't, this is the threshold right here where, you know, it's not going to work if we discuss this or if we do this together. Then just remove that thing from the itinerary and continue
and move on.
And move on and continue your friendship and continue the good things that you enjoy about each other's company, right?
Right, because the relationship is bigger than that one small infraction.
Yeah,
it's bigger than that. You have a lot better moments.
Yeah.
Together. So yeah, totally agree.
And I feel like this is the fight. This is like our real big fight that it's like, okay, we're different. You have your cultural things to work out, and I have my own cultural upbringing that's different from yours. So we're gonna avoid these hot button topics. I'm not gonna tell you how to treat your women in your life, you know, but I'm not gonna bring you anywhere around my girl. And let's go from there now. Now let's, and you know, we're still kids too, so both of us are still growing at this point. So it's not like we're set in stone and this is how I'm going to be for the rest of my life. We're still growing, we're still changing and evolving. So I feel like, you know, as we'll see, you know, the characters actually become more compassionate, especially with Nog's character. He becomes just really one of the greatest Ferengi of all time, right? So we start to see this as the beginning for me of his upward arc, story arc that's going to propel him to have these morals and this, you know, to be guided by principle and to be, you know, somebody willing to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. Those are the things that are going to end up showing themselves to be his true character. But I feel like the writers wanted us to start like you said, Ryan, kind of like down here so we can see where we're going to go.
The full arc, yeah. Really demonstrating the full arc.
Yeah, well, and I think the writers did a great job going into what Ferengis had already been set as, and then molding them into something different and something more rich and interesting. And you can definitely see that with Nog. This little skimpy rugrat, and then he grows.
Yeah. I love the way Melissa's expression changes from second to second. When she said, and they can mold anything, her eyes got so big, they can mold anything. And then 2 seconds later, she's like, this little rugrat.
I liked it when he said, I think I'll even wash my lobes.
And side note, I did wonder about that, like, very, very side note, Klingons, do they have to clean their ridges? Like, I feel like those things would be like really, they would like get sweat and dead. Do they like at least once a week have to get like 30 Q-tips and just, what are you doing tonight?
Q-tip thing.
I'm cleaning my, and it just looks like just a ton of sludge on the end. They have to
build
throw
up.
in,
It's
get
wax.
another one.
It's wax buildup.
Kind of like what the Ferengi might have to do, but maybe they have like bigger maybe they use cotton swabs or something.
Who knows? Well, I was thinking when Nog was over talking to Jake at his, about the date, he's like touching his ears, and I was like, isn't he kind of playing with himself?
Yes, that's what.
Yes. Don't do that somewhere else, man. Get a room, for Christ's sake.
And they've got their junk. I mean, basically, their ears are kind of like they've got their junk out for everybody to see. Like, shouldn't they have the lobes covered if it's an erogenous zone for them?
Yeah.
And they like play with it. Shouldn't they have some kind of little covering?
I guess that's part of the Ferengi culture. They're not ashamed of their junk.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah, I don't want to see their condoms. Just put it that way. Hello? Is this thing on?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We got your condom joke.
Okay. All right. Okay, that's it. I'm done.
Earmuffs.
A storyline.
Oh
Yeah. So let's start that off, because my first thought with that was we've had the benefit of talking with some of the writers of Deep Space Nine, and they've been extremely insightful, as have been a lot of the others guests that we've had. But one thing that they've made clear was that all the technobabble and the scientific stuff, that was like the hard work. That wasn't the fun stuff. So meaning that the fun stuff was writing the Jake and Nog story for this episode. The fun stuff was creating the dilemma with Kira and Bareil and, Captain Souffle or whatever her name is, Kai Wynn. But the part that sucked was for them probably the part that we're just like, what's going on, was like the medical explanation about how a guy dies and then somehow they see a synapse fire and then they're like, he froze his brain. So maybe, and I was just like, dude, maybe it's better that I just tune this part out, because it's probably all the same. I mean, is there? Yeah. And maybe if we could get Anne Marie on the free for all later, she's a doctor. We could ask her. We could be like, was there like even 5% of that was anything, or is that just like, or were they just saying just trust us, just follow along. We're just creating a really interesting dilemma. You don't have to worry about the details.
Yeah. When I was first watching this episode, I thought the name of it should have been, instead of Life Support, The Talking Dead. And so I was like, this is the Talking Dead. His synapses are going to tell us something. But no, I tuned out a lot of that stuff too, Ryan. When I heard his internal organs are failing and we have to supplement his brain because the synapses is, and I was like, okay, all right. Well, basically he's dead, but he's not dead. And it's a lot of, to me, the thing that I was trying to think of, because I remember you mentioned discussing with the writers. I remember Ira saying that we had to kill Bareil.
Bareil, yeah.
Yes. That we had to kill him, and because it wasn't working. And he didn't really give a solid explanation why, but he just said it wasn't working for whatever reason. You know, the guys upstairs didn't like what they were seeing, or maybe the interaction with Kira.
And Kira kissed another dude a few episodes ago, remember? Like a Maquis
Didn't she?
guy. Oh, it was Thomas Riker.
Right.
She made out with Thomas Riker. She's like, oh, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, different zip code or different area code, right?
Yeah, you know, Bareil's back home. He's not around right now.
Bareil who?
No, I think he initiated that, and it was unexpected. And
yeah, I think so.
What did she do?
She didn't resist. She didn't. Resistance was futile.
Futile, yeah.
You know, she's still a breathing, feeling.
Well, the guy is going to go to jail for the rest of his life, so she probably was doing him a favor. You know?
I mean, come on. Yeah. Riker, come on. If Riker leaned in on me, I'd probably be like,
your leg would go up. One of your legs would go up.
My ears would tingle.
It was a good kiss. I mean, come on.
Yeah, you can't miss that. No, I actually did feel like Bareil was, and this is no knock on the actor who's performing the role. I think he's doing a good job. I just wasn't really sold on his character so much. I just wasn't like, what's Bareil doing next? No, it was a little bit almost too nice, or too, you know, just too nice. And I felt like he's not a worthy enough adversary for Kai, you know, for
interesting. Kai
Wynn, right? I just didn't feel like she's so manipulative and so strong with her presence, right?
Exactly the words,
yeah. And it felt like he was kind of not an equal match for that, with the level of energy that was around. You know, you have Kira, who's intense, and Kai is intense.
Kira is a good match. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she is a good match. But then
Sisko's a good match. Sisko's
a good match. Bareil was kind of a little bit like, you know, whatever happens, happens. If I die, I die. It's like he wasn't full out intense mode to be able to like combat the energy for the people that were around, I thought.
Well, and I think his what is the word I'm looking for? His focus was in a different direction. He wasn't all about what can you do for me, like Kai Wynn, and getting all these accolades. He was more, what can I do for everyone else to further along the Bajoran way of life? And so, and I think that's what he's meant to do. And I think he was very dedicated to his religion and his practice. So I could see him being a very practiced meditator. I don't know if that's the right word.
Hippie.
But
no, I like meditator.
Very practiced in his religious, you know, vocation. So, well, and that came across to me, but I don't know if
there are a couple kudos there to the writers. For me personally, is that yeah, I agree. I kind of, from the beginning, from, you know, way back in the day when I first watched it, I didn't really care for Yvette Blackmon. I don't know why. You know, I'm sure it wasn't the actor as well, and I'm sure it wasn't the writing for it. I think there was just something where it was a good idea, but in practice, it kind of just, you know, there was something there that was lacking, or that we didn't have as much interest in. But there are two major things that I really liked about this episode. Is that, number one, they did create a good, feasible dilemma for him, even if the science part of it sucked. The science part always sucks, but you have to create something for that dilemma to work. And I thought the dilemma worked. I thought it was a great way for him to have hard decisions to make, for Kai Wynn to have hard decisions to make, even though she made them easily, for Kira and Bashir and Sisko. They all had a play in, how am I going to address this? Where's my stance? How do I do this? And ultimately, it fell on Bareil. And it was true that even when he couldn't speak for himself, they were correct that he did make it clear that he was willing to die for this. So they need to honor his wishes. That was the first part that I thought was great with the writing. The other part that I thought was great with the writing was his best moments, or the best moments around Bareil, were the nice things that Kira was saying to him at the end. There was some great wording there. I think I wrote some of it down when she says, I remember when you first came on the station, you had such serenity about you.
Right.
I thought you had all the answers. It really got on my nerves for a while there. You know, that was a good laughing moment. And she said, there's another line she said that was kind of like, you know, I thought we're all confused and you have all the answers. But then I realized that you're just as confused as we are, but you accepted your confusion, or something like that. Like, these are some really good lines and really good moments for him.
Yeah, and I think the real thing of why they had to dissolve his character was because of the chemistry between him and Kira. I don't think there was enough fire or passion in between the two of them, and I think that's why they were like, all right, this is not like the romance that is blowing up the screen right now. It's kind of a little bit soft and sedated. So I think that's probably one of the reasons. And I think he did serve a purpose, and he was a martyr in his own way. He did go out for the greater good of Bajor, and he put his own life on the line so that they could have this peace treaty, which Kai Wynn is going to get the credit for, you know? But I just feel like
Kai wins.
Yeah, but I think that was a good way to honor his character and the role he played thus far. Like, he didn't just go out like a punk. He actually sacrificed himself for the greater good, and, you know, and had the fortitude to say, no, I'm going to keep moving forward. I don't care. I don't want to be in a coma for months while you examine me, you know? And so that was the overall. Now, the science behind it and why the organs were failing and all that stuff, that was hard for me to kind of get through, which slowed up the pace of the speed of the episode for me, because it was like, I noticed that Bashir was wearing that outfit, the surgical red outfit. Is that something?
I think that's Bajoran.
Is that a new thing? Is that the first time we've seen that? Because I hadn't seen it. I was like, what is that outfit? Like, is that the surgical Bajoran surgical outfit?
Well,
I think it was Bajoran.
Surgery, but I don't know whether it's Bajoran or Federation.
I don't know either. I thought it was Bajoran, but I don't know. The free-for-allers will know.
Yeah, and then I noticed that he wasn't wearing gloves. It's like, so he's wearing all those elaborate stuff and no gloves. And
no mask, no gloves. We're doing this all wrong. We need to wear weird hats that come all the way down.
Bodysuits that zip up in the back. That's all you need. So I thought, you noticed that too, right, Melissa?
Like, what are they doing?
It's like, yeah, I can breathe and accidentally spit on the hole in his head, but at least my shoulder won't touch him.
But I want to say also about his performance. I enjoyed his performance in this. I actually thought he did a good job of showing his deterioration when it was going. I thought he performed that well, Bareil. Mm-hmm. And I also like the line that Bashir says to Kira at the end when she's basically begging for him to stay alive. Yeah. And he's like, no, he'll die like a man, not a machine, something to that extent, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow, that's an interesting thing, especially when you correlate it with what we're watching in Picard now, where Picard is finding himself having a terminal illness, right? And it is fixed by this cyber infusion, right? Isn't that what it is?
Yeah, he's RoboCop now.
He's Robo Picard.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think there was there's different technology in this episode and what Picard has.
Oh yeah, totally.
Well, yeah, I think that, and I also think that I think that Picard has more of his essential factors working, so like his cognizant ability is more there. So the part that's being supplemented with cyber genetics or whatever is actually the part that's deficient, but he has enough remaining capacity to make sure that he's not a machine. He's still
he's not losing his sentience.
Right.
Where Bareil would have.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that was very well illustrated. Again, like we can, we can nitpick about the science and the things that aren't good, but within those things, the writers, in this case, Ronald D. Moore, did a good job of doing the best they could with what they had to do, which was what they had to do was this weird scientific explanation. But he put a really great line in there when Kira was touching Bareil's hand, and he said, that your touch is different. He says it doesn't so much feel like a touch, but more like a long distance memory of a touch. And when he said that, I was like, wow, I can actually picture that. I can actually, that actually sticks as a good descriptor for this theoretical thing that he's going through. So again, big ups there, because sometimes writers have to write something that maybe doesn't always make sense, but a good writer can still do the best that they can in giving us something to chew on,
And maybe putting themselves into that position. What might I be going through if half of my brain has been replaced with a positronic matrix?
Mm-hmm. And I think O'Brien was in this episode for like 30 seconds.
Yeah, was he just at the beginning?
Yeah, right at the beginning they said, how come we don't just beam him in? And O'Brien's like, because there's a radiation field around.
And then he goes, see you next Monday.
Bye, guys, I'm done.
Yeah, it's Monday at 1:30, and he's like, see you next week, guys.
Exactly.
So cool.
I was like, did this guy come in for one line? I was like, this is amazing.
And I thought Dax was only at the very end, too, possibly. Yeah. It might have been at the beginning and end, but I was like, there was no O'Brien mostly and no Dax, but then she came in and said a couple lines. She's like, God, I've been here all week just for Friday at 4.
And then, of course, Core comes in with his usual, like, I'm making money off of selling everything. Merchandise. He's
merchandising. Merchandising.
He's all about his merchandising. They're selling like hotcakes. So
ooh, that sounds good. Hotcakes.
Hotcakes, yes. Huh. I got to get me some of that chat pack.
Yes, the chat pack.
But overall, I enjoyed the episode because Aaron was in it. I wasn't so much a big fan of the A storyline as much as I was the B storyline in this particular case. Obviously, because Aaron is so funny in this. I remember filming this episode when we were doing it, so it's one of the memories that I have. And, I thought there would be more to reveal in the negotiations between Bajor and the Cardassians when they were sitting down at the table with Sisko. I thought they were going to reveal, for example, that they wanted everything returned back to them, including the station.
Well, that's what
that's interesting.
That's what they hinted at. That's what I got.
That's what you got, right?
Yeah. That's what I got.
And that's what I was thinking. When I heard him say that, like, we want everything that's Cardassian returned to us, I was thinking, okay, so this is a play for them to take back control of the station, right?
Yeah, that's what I got from it, from the negotiations. But I also saw it as a glimpse into Kai can't really negotiate things for herself. She has to rely on everyone else around her. And she manipulates every situation to further her own interests. And that's just the way she operates.
Or a good leader knows how to delegate. She's like, you can negotiate, my child. You can fan my feet, my child. You can peel my grapes, my child.
Well, I thought Bashir did a good job of like psychoanalyzing her in their little scene that they had in the quarters, where he kind of says, "Oh, you need somebody as a fall guy. You don't want to, And he
that was great. Yeah,
he really dug into her as far as just analyzing, how she manipulates. Yeah, and I thought. I thought the end line there where she says, "I won't forget what you said here," and he looks back like, "Yeah, neither will I." I thought that was another great bumping of the heads. It was pretty good scene there.
She bumps heads with pretty much everybody on Deep Space Nine. At some point, everybody's getting a piece of her.
Even with Jake and Nog, with the schoolroom, She came to our school. It's like, you guys can't study that. She was picking on kids, so she has there's no line for her.
Yeah, I was thinking during this episode, I was like, gosh, she's a great villain.
So good.
She's always out for herself and doesn't care who she tramples on to. Yeah. But she'll say it sweetly, so it's not as overt, but yeah.
Yeah.
And she just acts like she's just so above it and so important, and how she forgives you. And you're like, but I didn't even do anything, Dick.
She's so benevolent and so on this high horse. And, you know, and yet she couldn't even negotiate with an underling of the car. She wasn't talking to Ducat or somebody who's really intimidating.
Well, right? I think this guy might be above Ducat. He's a legate. But I'm not 100% sure how the Cardassians work. I know there's Glenn, and then there's Gull, I believe, and then I think there's legate above that, but I'm not 100% sure. And yeah, Gul Dukat is one of the most important Gulls out there, of course.
And intimidating to talk to. Like, he's not completely. He's totally not a pushover. Yeah, this other guy was still intimidating, but he was more like, he
was easy.
It was easy compared to the regular ones.
He was more open to negotiations. He was an open thinker, although it didn't stop him from trying to manipulate the situation and getting, the station back. But
yeah.
Well, looks like we're going to have to leave it there because we are just about out of time, and the free-for-allers are banging on the door right now. They're like, let us in. They're like ripping off their shirts.
Yes.
A whole bunch of shirtless people.
I'll let them know you said that. No, don't rip those shirts. They're probably wearing cool ones like Captain Nog Forever shirts.
Don't rip those shirts.
Yeah, those are the good ones.
Those last forever.
Anyway, very quickly, what do you guys think that IMDb had for this? What rating did they get? Episode.
I'm going to guess that it was around a 7.2.
What about you, Malissa Longo?
Well, I'm not sure what IMDb would give, but
what the people gave on IMDb.
Yeah, but I'm going to just tell you what I would give, and 7.5.
Okay. So it got a 6.8 from all the people on IMDb. So that's where it went. But probably a lot of them were focusing on the A story.
Well, it was the A story, yeah. I mean, it was confusing. And with all the techno stuff, the science techno is different than the Star Trek techno, right?
Right. I like the 90s techno the best. But anyway.
Yes, that's too.
Rhythm is a dancer. No, that's like dance. Anyway. All right. Well, thanks very much, everybody. Stay tuned for the free-for-all. Special thanks, as always, to our friends Yvette Blackmon, Rex A. Wood, Dennis Koch, Homer Frizzell, Eve England, and Marie Segal, Carmen Shamwell, PJ Tomas, and everybody on our awesome team. And we will see you next time, Timothy Baum. Baum or Baum? I think it's Baum. We'll see you next time on Seventh Rule. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to a very special free-for-all. With Cirroc Lofton.
Hello.
Got Malissa Longo.
Hello.
TJ Jackson-Bey.
Hello.
And Marie Segal. Tim Baum.
Oh, NPR of you.
And Homer Frizzell.
Hello.
How NPR of you, she said. Very nice. Very nice reference.
Homer had a really good NPR voice.
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
No, that's
he did.
C-SPAN. That's C-SPAN voice.
That's C-SPAN.
Oh my gosh.
Easy.
And I throw
Easy,
on
TJ.
C-SPAN.
No.
So
don't be calling me C-SPAN.
Let's watch the House vote.
I don't know what that means.
That's what they play
I'm a
on
big
C-SPAN.
C-SPAN watcher.
I don't know if I've ever watched C-SPAN.
Or C-SPAN.
You're not missing much. You're not missing much, Ryan. Don't worry.
Speaking of wingspans, so Anne Marie's got a question, which is, who would your Star Trek wing person be? Homer, that was a good segue.
That was
we went
one
from
of It was one of your
C-span
best.
to wingspan to wing person, which was her
To
question.
wingman.
Yes.
Wingman.
That's solid.
Great.
Yes.
You're stretching
It kind of loses its punch when you explain it, though.
Yeah. When I explained it twice. But anyway, go ahead and ask the question for us, Anne-Marie, if you would, please.
Who in Star Trek of any series, all the incarnations, would be your wingman of choice or wing woman, wing alien?
Yeah.
All right. Let's start with you, Anne-Marie, since you've had more time to think about this.
Okay, so my number one.
Was this? And sorry, what was the inspiration behind this question?
Oh, obviously, how horrible a wingman Nog turned out to be. They couldn't even come back from it. It wasn't like, oh, he's so horrible, he's good. It was just total lie in his face, screech level Lisa turned off.
Yeah, and I never saw her again. My Saved by the Bell princess. Thanks a lot.
I know, and I especially loved how Nog would say Leanne. Like, it was just so beautiful. That was the worst impression ever. So I would say my number one would be Dax, because she's always trying to help like Sisko out with women, and she's very wise and knows how to play a situation. She's had some good double dates with Kira. And then my other choice would be Jake and Nog, because I think you could play them off if you're a third person in that situation. Just be like, oh, that's Jake and Nog.
Yeah. Dax was very open-minded too. That's a great answer. Super open-minded.
Always helping Kira. Like, she's great at it.
Mm-hmm. Willing to date somebody with a transparent cranium.
Captain Bareil.
Yeah. That's a good question. What about you, TJ? Do you have an idea who would make a great wing person or entity?
Well, obviously, Jake Sisko. I mean, if he can get Nog a date, if he can go up to a girl and say, I got this Ferengi guy.
Melissa,
that's
she
my
made
friend, and you should go out with him. And she actually comes, that's my wingman.
He's so cute.
He's a little orange and
He's a little orange, but he's still so cute.
He likes umots.
yes.
Well, Melissa, let's go to you then.
Well, so I changed my answer because I didn't realize that you meant wingman as far as dating goes. But I would go with Anne-Marie's choice as far as Jax, because she's a little more seasoned.
Sophisticated.
300 years of experience, you know.
Yeah.
Her belt. I think she would probably be the best one.
Yeah.
And Jadzia Dax, not Ezri.
Jadzia Dax, yes. Yes.
Was that some Ezri shade?
Yes.
No.
Well, Anne-Marie has hard Ezri shade always.
She's great in her own way.
What way is that, Anne-Marie?
Awesome.
I love
Yes.
Ezri, but as far as dating advice, I would go with Jadzia.
Yeah.
All right. Homer, who's your favorite wing person of choice?
So I've gone through two others and now I'm on to a third. Initially,
give us all.
Okay, I'll take you through my steps. Initially, I was like, oh, Counselor Troy, that would be great, because then I could find out what this person is thinking about me. But I'm like, that's kind of creepy, and it kind of takes away from the mystery.
And she also knows
stuff.
what you're thinking.
Yeah,
exactly. So then I was like, okay, Ethan Peck's Spock. And then I was like, no, he's going to steal everyone away from me. Exactly. So I was like, no, I don't want that guy. So then I was like, okay, Kira Nerys. Like, she's very forthright and I'll know. And she's also willing to, I think it would be a good match. Like, we'd have some good conversations. And yeah, I'm just going to stop there and say Kira.
She can be so judgy though. If she doesn't like your choice, like a Captain Baudet scenario.
Hey, I'll take that information and do with it as I see fit.
Yes.
She'll always be honest with you.
Exactly.
You know that.
Yeah.
She was my wingman for everything else.
Yeah.
Well, Tim, any thoughts on this?
Well, I was going to say originally Jetsia, which everybody else chose. I would have to go with Vic Fontaine.
Ooh. Big win. Big
I've been
win.
one-upped.
Not only could he be your wingman, he'll give you a drink too.
Yeah.
I've been
He also
two-upped.
provides the location.
Yes.
Give you a
And
drink, you get a serenade, all the work.
Entertainment, the whole thing.
I
And
mean,
a casino.
he helped Odo out to hook up with Kira.
Yeah,
Gave
he
him
has a
advice
great
on that.
track record, and he got Bashir a date too.
Yes.
This is true.
Which is not easy.
He couldn't do it for himself.
Which is very not easy for him, at least.
Well, that's where the greatness of Esri comes in.
Yes.
I think that's a great answer. I think Vic Fontaine might be.
Yeah. That is a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if he would like compete with you. Does he? He's not really trying to.
Nah.
No.
He's not. Yeah.
That's
He
why you don't
wasn't-
want Riker as your wingman or Kirk.
Yeah, I was going to say Riker in the beginning, and I said no, I don't really want Riker. You'd just be sitting back watching, like, hey, can you guys keep it down in there?
He would walk away with both.
Where's a chair I can go over the back of?
Yeah. Spock, do you have a good idea for a wingman?
No, I don't actually. You see what my wingman did to me?
Yeah.
Left me hanging, screwed up my whole situation.
Oh.
I had the girl from Saved by the Bell, man. I don't know what else to say. She's as good as it gets in my age group growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And he completely screwed that up for me. It was a one and done. I should have
Maybe
chased
they
after
left and
her.
like blamed you too.
I should have chased after her.
Like, there's no way.
And
Jake
by the
fits
way,
both of us.
I did get Nog a pretty girl too. To get, she was a very attractive girl. I don't know what her alien species was, but she was pretty and pretty good catch for him. So
Yeah.
he screwed that up too.
Well,
What about you, Ryan?
I've had plenty of time to think about this. My first thought was Ensign Boimler. Stay tuned.
Okay.
That's from Lower Decks.
Oh.
Coming out in a couple
Wow.
weeks on CBS.
Well, somebody has all the access over here.
Yeah, so by virtue of default, he would make me look really good because seems like he's a real goof, but maybe he'll take it too far and maybe he won't end up being the best. But I do think that Rafi on Picard would be an excellent wing person. She would be really cool because she's friendly. She can be motherly if somebody like dumps you or somebody rejects you. She'll be like, she wasn't worth your time, honey. Go, oh, thanks. You mean it? Of course I mean it. You going to drink that? Whatever.
She can really read a room too. Like,
Right.
She's really good at
Yeah.
picking up subtle cues.
Right. And the third one, Anne Marie's going to guess this one. I think Hoshi would be.
I was gonna say, do not even say Hoshi.
I think
There's
she'd
no
be
way
great.
that's the answer for this.
I think Hoshi would be a great wing person.
Hoshi.
because
In what universe?
Our universe and the mirror in the mirror universe. she'd
Definitely
kill
not.
it.
Yeah.
Melissa totally disagrees.
If we got mirror,
Yeah, I've never
I would
seen
do
him
Mirror
fight.
Universe Kira. Actually, I'm going to change my answer.
Oh.
Mirror Universe Kira.
Intended.
Dangerous.
Yeah,
Join in,
She'd
but-
pull the Riker and steal them both too.
Oh yes.
Yes.
and I'd probably be cool with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole dominatrix thing and the
Yeah, I kind of like that a little bit. Are we recording?
Is this thing on? Yeah.
Hello?
Good to know.
Homer, is something going on?
I was just looking for my ceiling fan. I didn't know where it went.
There, you can use mine.
Oh, there we go. That's very nice.
Oh, wow.
That was a great question, Anne Marie. So we still have a few minutes of bonus time. So while we have this time, we did review the episode
Life
Life Support. Thank you. Well, So you're saying as a doctor that the medical aspects were okay, that if
I
you...
thought they were incredibly brilliant. Like, first of all, the names, things like Vasican, like that's exactly what you would choose to name it, like the vaso for
vascularity,
vasculature, and then the kin for like kinase, and it probably affects some sort of kinin, which is like a structure, protein structure, else the kinase that breaks it down. And I thought the whole thing was just really incredible, like the way that the radiation did something to them, like either the polarization or depolarization of the nerves. And we might not fully understand that because they're actually Bajoran. So we might not know exactly like what polarity they live at and how like all the inner workings of that work in terms of like where in your body it is. And then the other thing I thought was so interesting are like the way, even just like when they were trying to revive him, everything is so accurate, like clamping and using pressors, all things that you would normally do. And then you have to have a pretty sophisticated understanding to start talking about like taking blood away from one organ system, going to another. It was very like ICU kind of level things, and helping with the shock and what kinds of shock. And then like clamping down the vessels in one organ system for another. And it reminds me a lot of like a transplant patient or like a patient suffering from like brain damage. And they did some really sophisticated things with like when they were bringing it, like reviving him. The first time they used that like thing on his brain, and it reminded me a lot of like a deep brain stimulator, which they use for Parkinson's disease now, where you'll stimulate like specifically in parts of the brain for the parasympathetic system. But I don't think that was around back then. So it's just like really cool the way they think about that. And the other thing I really, really liked, especially, is the medical ethics part of it, which I think Bashir really shines at in this episode. It's one of my favorites. This and like the quickening, I think, are two of his best. He's such a great advocate. Yeah, it's so fascinating, and he just handles it so beautifully, and which Bashir always does, especially. But I really like this episode for that.
Okay, that's the good stuff. Melissa,
and the parietal lobe thing is the other thing. Sorry.
Melissa happened to point out something that I'd like to see you defend, which was they're in their full surgery garb with no masks and no gloves.
Yeah,
your thoughts?
I know. Your thoughts?
So
well,
go ahead.
It's very hard because when they start doing it, you're like, oh, well, maybe it's just because they're not like actually in the body. But you hear the nurse say like she's taking samples. So she was gonna take samples out, and then you also like they're obviously stimulating something. So yeah, that part's ridiculous, but that's so in keeping with like the TNG. Like
was that a Bajoran? Was that a Bajoran surgical gown?
It's Federation, because that's what they use to operate on Picard when he has his heart surgery in I don't remember the episode title.
Tapestry.
But it's always like a little bit of a Tibetan vibe. Of like, basically they're missing a fuzz.
Good point. Okay, Homer, TJ, and Tim, you guys get to rule on how good that answer was.
I actually thought it was wonderful. I'm old enough to remember when Louise Fletcher was Nurse Ratched. Right. And, you know, on DS9, she kind of played the religious version of Nurse Ratched.
She was Nurse Ratched.
So, I mean, like, she played that to perfection. But, you know, I've been trained with, I was a paramedic many years ago. So, yeah, I agree with Anne Marie. They did a great job as far as the medical, except for the gloves and the mask.
Yeah.
Maybe they have special lighting in the 23rd century that you don't need to wear gloves and masks.
Yeah. You would just think you
like the Blue Room on Enterprise.
Yes.
Yeah. Homer, any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So I think now on the seventh rule, when we're reviewing any kind of episode where there's some medicine heavy type of items that come up, I think Anne Marie should comment and sort of say, yes, that makes sense. That doesn't make sense. I think it should be an ongoing part of the free-for-all.
I think so.
That's good, because the three of us were kind of like, yeah, that just sounds, and we're like,
That's
we'll bring on Anne-Marie, and then Anne-Marie was like, nope, that's all legit. You guys are dumb. Shit.
got this thing over his face, got this other thing there, got this little thingy dingy, some words. Yeah.
I have to say, I forgot to say, the only thing that was a little weird, when they talk about it like starting in the parietal lobe, like everything that it would do because that part is damaged, like the proprioception, that all is legit, but like I just kind of have a hard time believing that Bajoran's brains like evolved in the same way so that all 4 lobes are like exactly the same as ours. Aside from that, I loved it and I thought it was so well done, and like even just the naming of fake things was so intelligent.
And Melissa, you were going to say something?
Say for the record that I did not say that I tuned out during that babble stuff. I didn't.
You just watched us do it.
Exactly. I thought it was very interesting. But
Well, I think the thing that you brought up with the ethics is important too, because in this show and in most of in the series, I guess the doctor has so much weight when it comes to their patient and they're treating their patient. They can override. They can send you out of the sick bay if they want and call ask you to be escorted out, and they can actually override the captain's decision if they feel like it's a medical necessity. So I think that. With the ethics part, I think that's an important aspect of being a doctor.
And also just like what the patient's ethics are in addition, because even though Bashir's like an advocate for everything that he would choose to make Vedic Bareil be better, actually it goes against Vedic Bareil's religion and his own like convictions. And it reminded me a lot of like, for example, like Jehovah's Witnesses, and if you can give them blood transfusions, or like certain grafts are made out of pigs, and like you have to have a discussion with your Muslim patients about that. So it really, but especially like the blood transfusion one, it's a very eloquent way of talking about that sort of scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I have some background with that as well.
Let's hear it.
With blood transfusions, just that whole discussion and that aversion. In the past.
Yeah.
I thought, the medical stuff was good, but I really, I don't know if this was discussed before, but I got hooked into the emotional story that Kira was going through, especially towards the end. And I forgot that this one can make me tear up at the end a little bit.
Yeah.
So when I rewatched it, I was like, after the speech that the doctor gave and said, this is the end of the road, I can't do anymore because that's just going too far. And then having to accept that because I'm pretty sure this whole thing, really kind of happened in a faster sequence than we perceived on the show. So like, she's excited that he's there, and then just as fast he's gone.
Especially like as they do that huge pan out, and the camera just stays, and you hear them talking, and it's like their last time talking. It's just like, it's so good, and you also kind of have this specter of like how many times has Kira had to do that in the past because of what her previous like personal struggles been, and it just is also heartbreaking to think like how good she's getting at recognizing when this is the last time you have to talk to somebody. It's just, and I just like think this is such a hidden gem in Deep Space Nine that doesn't get talked about enough because there's so many other amazing episodes. But
it's actually rated lower than I thought it would be rated. Ryan said it was a 6.8.
We all need to rectify that.
Yeah. Anne-Marie likes to change her votes too.
Well,
she was like, I only gave it a 9, but I'm going to give it a 10 tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. Or like the second this is done.
Yeah, and the other thing I noticed about Kira's journey in this episode is in the beginning, she was totally against Kai. And she was like, do you want me to escort her out? I'll kick her ass out of this little...
Yeah, that's right. We didn't cover that.
Okay? So she was like, I'll get rid of her. She's pissing me off too. And then at some point later after that, she actually said, no, I agree with Kai. Like, I agree with her that this should be the medical treatment, and that the treaty means more to him than his own life.
Totally. Yeah. There's some other like interesting like counterparts too in Voyager, where, for example, like when Neelix loses his lungs from an alien, and Tess has to make the decision. Yeah, and Tess has to make the decision that she wants him kept alive at all costs, and like they don't even ask Neelix. So I think not to play favorites, but in terms of the early Voyager, like they're on about the same time. Like Deep Space Nine is handling these discussions in a much more sophisticated way.
Well, this is
a more realistic way.
If I remember correctly, the Neelix, the DN episode was one of the very, very first ones.
Episode 4. I think it's
first season.
So I think this is the first episode of DS9 that aired after the premiere of Voyager.
It is January 30th, 1995, and we talked about that for a little bit. So what that means is this was only a couple weeks before the Neelix episode. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was I kind of remember when it aired because it was the first time that Neelix one was the first time I'd really thought about transplant ethics much, and then they went on to do a lot of transplant stuff. So it's really, really interesting, and it's really interesting looking at the two shows and like where they are in their and how like their air date, which is so fascinating.
Right. Yeah, Homer, you're right. This is it from here on out. Starting with this episode, Deep Space Nine is back to being one of two shows playing. It had half of a season, half a year, 13 episodes of being on its own, and now it's right back to one of two. Anyway, I think we're just about done here. Good talk, guys. Good questions, good answers.
Yeah. Thanks, Anne-Marie.
Oh, thank you. And I love Melissa's shirt. It's so much fun to see Nog floating around.
Oh,
yeah, it is.
Yes.
Ta-da.
You look so cute.
So cute.
I love it.
Captain Nog.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. And for everybody at home, thank you guys very much. We'll see you next time. Always remember the 7th rule.